Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. So the title of this video is Bankers Own the World. And I'm going to get to that here in a few minutes. I just wanted to give you a couple of recent events that are going on around the world. So this will lead on to how and why it is that I think that bankers own the world. All right. First, ladies and gentlemen, let me thank you for being here today, first of all. And let me tell you that the pantry entries that we went over on Sunday, we haven't had very many people in the last few days. Or actually, it's been like 3 days since anyone's done any voting. So I'm going to go ahead and give it till Friday evening so that I can tally up all of the votes. And I'm going to announce the winners. There's going to be 3 winners this Sunday. I've always been of the mindset that, and I think I've mentioned this in some previous videos way back, I haven't done very many financial videos really on this channel, but I think I've mentioned this in the past that I think that the U.S. Federal Reserve note is the cleanest dirty shirt in the hamper. It's the strongest currency in the world, all right? For whatever reasons, you know, it's the strongest currency in the world. So I think that we are going to see other countries, one by one, start falling before it finally gets to our shores. Now, in a way, that's good news for us, for those of us that live here in the United States, because it gives us more time to prepare. The world is pretty much in peril. And I'm going to show you towards the end of this video why that is. I just wanted to read you a little bit of this article, because this is going on right now in Ghana. And Ghana, for those of you that don't know, is a real small country that's located in Africa. And why does this matter? It's just a small country that's located in Africa. You know, what does it matter? Well, it does matter because it's going to start in small countries and it's going to get worse for bigger countries. And you're going to see a domino effect take place. This is what I think, 100% my opinion. Right? But I think it's important that we see what's going on in the world. That way we can, you know, we can learn our lessons from them and we can better prepare for ourselves here. Okay, so this article here says horror in Ghana as a third of banks shutter, sparking unprecedented bank runs. And the reason why I say it's important to see this, ladies and gentlemen, is because central banks exist in almost every country in the world except for like 9 or 10 small countries that don't have a central bank. So they all operate under the same rules pretty much, right? Fractional reserve banking, printing money, controlling interest rates, and all those things, all right? So the central bank that operates in Ghana is pretty much operating in the same manner that the banks operate here in the U.S., and that they operate in almost every country in the world except for like 9 or 10 countries that don't have central bank. And it says here, it's bad enough that drought-like conditions and rapid population growth have stoked a shortage of water and other vital resources in Ghana, a country that boasts one of the fastest growing economies on earth. But a banking crisis is just now roiling the country's economy and has wiped out $1.6 billion. Now, that may not sound like a lot, ladies and gentlemen, but it is a lot for a small country like that. And this is the part that I wanted you to kind of take a look at. One couple, 2 of some 70,000 investors who were impacted by the shuttering of some 23 savings and loan companies, about 1/3 of the banks in the country, and a run on the country's asset managers described to Bloomberg how they deposited money in a short-term investment product intended to help save money for the wife to finish her economic PhD. And isn't that ironic, ladies and gentlemen? His wife was saving up money to finish her economic PhD. It just shows you that it's not just here in this country that people aren't being taught reality, but it's in other countries as well. This person here is saving up to get her PhD in economics, and still she felt safe with placing her investment funds in a bank or an investment bank, which means that she obviously wasn't taught how the monetary system really works, only to discover they may never get the money. The couples are among at least 70,000 investors who have become collateral damage from a cleanup of Ghana's banking system. Pretty much they had a bail-in, ladies and gentlemen. Pretty much the banking system there was going under, so they just kept the money that belonged to their customers or to their creditors, really, because the customers are the creditors, right? And they just kept it in order to save themselves, and they left the creditors out in the cold, right? The crackdown, which reduced the number of lenders by a third and saw the closure of 23 savings and loans companies, also triggered a run on fund managers who couldn't sell their holdings fast enough to meet demand. That's tying up as much as 9 billion cedis, $1.6 billion of investments, more than a third of the 25 billion cedis in assets that private fund managers oversee for retail and institutional investors. So this is what's going on in Ghana right now. Pretty much 70,000 people that trusted banks with their money are pretty much out $1.6 billion, right? Because they put their money in an institution that they were not aware that these institutions no longer have to return their money to them, because once they deposit those funds, it no longer belongs to them. It belongs to the banks, and they will do what they want with it. And if something happens, oh well. So I wanted to show you something else right now that's going on in Argentina. They've been going through somewhat of an economic crisis ever since 2001, really. But here in the last few days, they've really hit it hard. And it says here, who is to blame for Argentina's economic crisis? The truth of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, that it doesn't matter who is to blame. If you ask these people who is to blame, it doesn't matter to them because they're already losing out. By the time that you have to ask who is to blame, it's too late. So the reason why I'm putting this video out is to allow you to think, all right, and allow you to ask yourself these questions. What would I do if something like this happened? How would something like this affect me if it were to happen here where I live? That is the main reason I'm putting this video out. And I also want to show you some statistics that I think you would be very interested in. So please hang on for those because they are very interesting and they're coming up here pretty soon. It says here that inflation has soared 54% from 18%. The public debt has grown more than 86% of GDP from 53%. How much of this economic crisis and poor performance is his predecessor's fault? So they're pretty much talking about the president or the election that is about to take place. I guess they had what is like their version of the primaries, in the US. And it looks like the president, that's the incumbent, it looks like he's going to be on his way out and they're going to be voting in a new governmental party, right? But what I want you to realize here is this. It says inflation soared to 54% from 18%. Okay. Now, let me show you this real quick. I want to show you how gold maintains its purchasing power. Check this out. This is the price of gold in Argentina dollars, or whatever you want to call them, right? This is the price of gold in the Argentine currency. And look at the date down here. You see the date down here in this red? This is when their little mini crisis, or not really mini crisis, pretty big crisis started around the middle of July or so, or roughly about a month ago or so, 5 weeks ago. At that time, the price of gold was $58,586. That's just about 5 weeks ago. Look at what it is now. Now it's 82,000. It went from 58,600, let's call it, to 82,600. Let's get our calculator out. So we're going to take 58,600 divided by 82,600 equals that. Multiply this times 100 and then minus 100. So since then, gold has gone up about 30%. And their inflation went up from 50 to 54% from 18%, which is about 36%. So gold has maintained pretty much all of its purchasing power. I'm pretty certain that it's going to continue to go up. So in this case, people that had paper money under their beds, in their mattresses, or even in the bank, lost 36% of their purchasing power. Whereas if they would have had some of their excess wealth in gold other than keeping it in the bank or under their mattress, they lost all of that money to inflation. That, ladies and gentlemen, is why I am a proponent of gold. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not telling you what to do. But what I am doing here is showing you an example, an example that is occurring in real time. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, an example that is occurring in real time. Look at this. This is just in 2019. Let's go to January of 2019, January 7th. Gold was at 48,000 January of 2019. Today, it's at 82,000. It's at almost twice as much as what it was just 8 months ago. So ask yourselves this question. If you were an Argentinian, or if you were from Argentina, if 8 months ago you had savings, money that you were putting away for whatever, money that you were putting away long term that you did not plan on using, let's say, for example, maybe if it was for retirement or for a child's wedding or for a child's college or for a car that you wanted to pay cash for in 5 years and you wanted to save up the money cash, would you have been better off had you purchased gold and held your wealth in gold? Or would you have been better off had you just kept your wealth, your savings, in paper? This graph says it all. Okay, this graph says it all. Right? So I wanted to go over a really quick little article here. I was wondering to myself, how much is global debt? And I remember a while back I was talking about global debt. I'm not sure what video it was in, but it came up and I just mentioned it. But this is as of January of this year, and it's more now. I believe it's above $250 trillion. Global debt of $244 trillion nears record despite faster growth. So right now, if you took all of the debt around the world, you have $244 trillion of debt. Now, all of that debt is the debt of everything that is owed throughout the world. Okay? Now, I wanted to go ahead and read this to you real quick. It says reasons for a national debt. And it says here, the bottom line is that government borrowing is a tax on unborn generations. However, loan-funded government investment in infrastructure will reap economic benefits for generations to come. And it says here, debt to fund infrastructure projects is called capital expenditures. So pretty much if let's say you're a company and you borrow debt in order to get new machinery and to hire more people and to get more product and stuff like that, that's a capital expenditure. It means that you think that by borrowing that money and getting new machinery and getting up to date and getting more people to work there and things like that, that you're going to eventually not only recoup the amount of money that you borrow so you can pay it back, but that it will enable your company to make even more money. So when governments borrow money, they can use it on capital expenditure, which means that they're going to fix their infrastructure so that the economy can roll along a little bit better, all right? Because we need roads for trucks to travel through. They're going to fix bridges, they're going to fix dams, things that is going to enable the country to operate better as a country. But take into account what the U.S. is spending their money on. What does the U.S. spend their money on that they borrow? Is it on infrastructure? I don't think so. You know, how many dams do we have around the country that are in really bad shape? How many bridges that we have that are in really bad shape? You all already know that most of our roads are in pretty bad shape. But instead, we take that money that we borrow and instead of using it for capital expenditure, we use it for social programs and we use it for war. And those two things are things that don't really have a return. So whenever you build a bomb and pay for a bomb and you blow it up, you're not getting a return on that. It is wealth that is destroyed. And we've already gone on another video that I did a while back, not too long ago, that since the war on poverty, we've spent over $25 trillion since the war on poverty began. And we have more poor people now than we did back then. All right. So that's the problem with our borrowing, is that it's okay to borrow, but if you're not getting a return on what you're doing with that money, then you're borrowing for the wrong reasons. Now, this is why I say that bankers own the world. Who creates the money? Who creates fiat currencies? It's created one of two ways. Either the central banks print it out of thin air. Okay, they either actually print money, physically printing money and putting it out into the economy. That's one way. Or the central banks control the interest rates. The more that you reduce interest rates, the more that it encourages people to borrow. And when people borrow, since we work off of what's called fractional reserve banking, when people borrow, 90% of what they're borrowing is money that's being created out of thin air. Because if you borrow $100,000 from a bank, the bank only has to have $10,000 in reserve to lend you $100,000. So that other $90,000 that you borrowed, it was pretty much borrowed into existence. It did not exist before you borrowed it. So pretty much banks are the ones that create the money. They're the ones that loan the money out. So this is how much the world is worth. The world is worth about $228 trillion. And this is for all of the real estate in the world. And this is in US dollars. So all of the residential real estate in the world, ladies and gentlemen, right, in the world, is worth about $168.5 trillion. All of the commercial real estate is worth about $32 trillion. Agricultural land and forestry, $27 trillion. Outstanding securitized debt, all right, $100.2 trillion. Equities, $70.1 trillion. And gold, all right, gold, $6.5 trillion. Is really more like $10 trillion right now. These numbers are 2017 numbers, and it's probably a little bit higher now, but it's not going to be that much higher. But the point is this: if we know that banks are the ones that create money and the ones that lend out money, that means that the loans, all of the debt that is owed to the banks, all right, has to be paid back to the banks. Well, if the total global debt is $244 trillion and the world is worth $228 trillion, who owns the world? Since there is more money that is owed to the banks than what all of the real estate and all of the securitized debt, equities, gold, agricultural, forestry, land, everything is only worth $228 trillion. It's worth less than what the world owes. Now listen to this. A central bank is an institution that oversees the currency supply of money and interest rates of a nation. The central bank manages commercial banks. The central bank is in charge of printing and coining national currencies, as well as increasing the monetary base of the nation. The central bank also acts as a lender when a financial crisis occurs, and it also regulates member banks to prevent fraudulent behavior. In other words, a central bank implements monetary policies, sets the interest rate to maintain exchange rate and inflation, regulates the banking industry, and controls the entire nation's money supply. Central banks also manage the foreign exchange, government bonds, and gold reserves. A central bank is a critical component of a nation. These banks are primarily independent, with limited control by legislative and executive bodies. Throughout the world, most countries have central banks. Approximately 75% of the central bank assets of the world are controlled by China, United States, Japan, and the EU. There are also a handful of countries that do not have central banks. These are the countries right here that don't have a central bank. Really quick video, ladies and gentlemen. I think it was quick. I just want you guys to think about this stuff. You know, think about these things that affect you without you even knowing that they exist. You know, all of these things affect every one of us. and we don't really realize what's going on behind the scenes. I mean, look at this. The global debt, the global debt is more than what all of the real estate in the world is worth. This is something to consider. Look at how well gold has done in preserving wealth for this nation that is going through pretty bad inflation right now and is probably going to get worse. And what happens when a bank decides to keep your money because of its own malfeasance? All right, ladies and gentlemen, well, I hope you got something out of this. At the very minimum, I hope it's making you think to do some research of your own so you can look for these things. It seems that nowadays, if you want information, you have to actually go and look for it instead of just waiting for it to be spouted out to you by any news channels that you may watch. All right, so having said that, thank you very much for joining in. Remember, this Sunday is going to be the announcement of the winners for the pantry picks. All right, for the pantry pictures. All right, so be there. I will have the first, second, and third place winners, and I will show you guys what the prizes are for each place. All right, I think you guys are going to like it. I think I did something a little bit different this time. All right, having said that, remember to be good to each other. When good people do good things happen. Remember to reach one, teach one, and repeat. If we all did this, the world would be a better place, and you know that it will be a better place. Many blessings to all of you and your families. This is Alaska Prepper, and I am out.